whom we honor today, is a giant among us, for he has unflinchingly confronted challenge and controversy throughout his life. And he has modeled for all of us that it is essential to name and oppose injustice wherever we find it, by relying on the power of nonviolent resistance and peaceful persistence. Desmond Tutu began his adult life of work as a teacher, early on as a teacher of theology in South Africa. But throughout his life, he has taught the world. In his books, he calls us to be a giant among us, to feel, he has to reflect on, to be in touch with, and to be touched by others, through words, gestures, and actions that heal ourselves and a world battered and broken by the storms of discrimination, selfishness, and cruelty. Desmond Tutu has taught us not to fear, but rather to conquer this most destructive emotion by engaging those who use fear as their weapon. He has not been silenced by the fear of overwhelming power. Indeed, by his example, he implores us to carry out the most basic and arguably most difficult of all Christian teachings: love your enemies. His efforts to live that belief have had far-reaching consequences, acknowledged in numerous ways over the years, including the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1984, and our own nation's highest civil honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, in 2009. Archbishop Tutu's observation that without forgiveness there's no future teaches us that we must not lose sight of the centrality of reconciliation and the work of justice. He continuously teaches us that the necessity of acting to oppose injustice is unequivocal. Standing on the sidelines silently and without intervening when we witness unequal treatment, racial discrimination, or oppression is not an option if we seek a just world. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Before he became a teacher, Desmond Tutu dreamed of being a physician, and over time he has indeed become a healer for his parishioners, for his diocese, for his fellow priests and bishops, for whole nations, for the world, for all of us. He has always stressed the importance of community and has relied on the unstoppable power that resides in the willingness of a community to challenge those who would oppress them. And he continually reminds us that this is the source of our power and our ability to empower others. My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. Throughout his life of ministry, Archbishop Tutu has preached the power of love. Arch, as he is known to those millions who are close to him, has played an important role in pushing all of us to a higher level completion and fulfillment. He has modeled what he describes as the effort to dance in tune with the one who is playing the music, and he seeks to bring everyone into that joyful dance of community that honors both us and the Creator who composed the universal overture in which we all take part when we are fully human.
Greetings to everyone, and welcome to this special tribute to celebrate a life of a hero, a life of a leader, a life of an Ubuntu leader, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. I'll be your host today. My name is Moses Machipisa from Zimbabwe. And I would like to take this time just to acknowledge the presence of everyone gathered here. Thank you so much for being part of this session as we celebrate the life of Desmond Tutu. Just a few housekeeping rules just before we start. Please make sure that your mic is muted at all times. And there's also a simultaneous translation of this program into Spanish and Portuguese, as well as English in the different sections of the program that we have different languages being spoken. And you can see as on the screen that there's going to be a button which is to your right hand, bottom right, where you can access the interpretation for this program. So without further ado, as we move with the program, I would like to call upon Professor John Volmink, who is the president of the Ubuntu Global Network, to come and give his opening remarks as we celebrate the life of Desmond Tutu, who passed on the 26th of December. Over to you, Professor John.
Thank you, Moses. Good day, everyone, from all around the world. On this rather solemn occasion, I've been glued to the television for the past several days as I listened to all the beautiful tributes pouring in from all around the globe in honor of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Each of these tributes had a ring of authenticity because they came from the heart of people. There are no superlatives that could adequately capture the positive impact the Arch has had on the lives of countless people and communities all over the world. But most of us will agree that someone of the moral stature and leadership qualities of this great man comes to us as a blessing, but only once in a generation, or even once in a lifetime. So I will be forever grateful that I have been fortunate enough to be alive during this time, to witness and be inspired by the life of the Archbishop, and for the privilege I had to have met him and for what I've learned from him. I was particularly moved to hear people speak about all the personal qualities that have endeared him to so many from every walk and every station in life. Some said, and I like this, some people said Archbishop Tutu knew how to cry, while others said he knew how to laugh. For me, he was the epitome of love and humility and joy and hope, in short, of humanity. And all of these were the results of the faith by which he lived, and that despite all the hardships that he had to endure. He also knew how to be a friend. I was touched by the account of a man yesterday on TV, just standing in line, waiting to get into the cathedral, but he was number one in line, and he stood there from very early in the morning. And when they interviewed him, he said, well, he's just an ordinary person. He has no particular title, but the Archbishop regarded him as a friend. And the man told the story of how there was a time when he ended up in hospital and he didn't let anybody know, including the Arch. And then he was very surprised when the nurses came and told him, your priest would like to come in and pray for you. And he could not believe his eyes when in walked Archbishop Desmond Tutu. and that he had taken time from his busy schedule just to be a friend, to come alongside his bed. And that's just who the Arch was. Everybody was important to him, irrespective of status, of whether you're famous or not famous. Everyone, for Archbishop Tutu, deserves equal respect and to be treated with equal dignity. But he did not only have a beautiful sense of humor, he also had an irrepressible sense of justice. And he was a man of courage and did not hesitate to speak truth to power. He served as a moral compass of this country and to a lot of people around the world. But he had the courage to be God's presence in places where many of us would have stopped short. None of us will ever forget that day in 1985, when the Archbishop put himself at considerable risk and worked himself through a mob to intervene and stop a mob from killing a person who was being accused of being a collaborator. But he stood up and he stood between. And at the same time, he often gave, in this country, a tongue lashing to anybody that was corrupt and misbehaved. So we thank God for the Arch. And we thank God for a life well lived, a life that was inspirational to all and helped us all to rediscover our courage and renew our faith, to think big again when we are working towards making this world a better place for all. So as we say our last goodbye to Archbishop Desmond Tutu, we call to mind the glorious treasure of memories that are ours to keep and to hold on to and to enjoy, and most importantly, to emulate. And I think that's an important point. We in the Ubuntu Global Network, together with other people in other parts of the world, if we say that we have been inspired by the Archbishop and by his life, then we must come to understand that we have a responsibility to follow his example. We cannot just say we've been inspired. For to be inspired by someone means to be filled with a desire and an urge, not only to feel inside, but to do something significant in the world. And in other words, to emulate. In recent weeks, and with this I close, I bought 2 books. One is an authorized portrait of the Archbishop, and that was compiled by his daughter, Mpho Tutu Van Firth. And the other is a book written by his granddaughter called Everyday Ubuntu. That's a new book. And his granddaughter's name is Mungi Ngomani. And in the foreword of this book of his granddaughter, the Arch speaks with great pride and delight that the wisdom that he had received from those before him is being passed on. And she wrote, Mungi writes, so beautifully, and I wish I had time to talk about it. She writes so beautifully in the book of the difference between kindness and Ubuntu. Kindness is not Ubuntu. Kindness may be something you do for someone, while Ubuntu has to do with recognizing the inner worth of someone, of listening deeply, and to experience a connectedness with that person, treating that person and ourselves with dignity that they deserve. So if we want to make the Arch smile from wherever he is today, let's go beyond just nice words. You know, Ubuntu is beautiful words. Let us go beyond those nice words and concepts and show that we are prepared to emulate this great man by putting into action those things that we have learned from him. So let us resolve to stand up for what is right and stand between those who are being oppressed in any way and their oppressors. I just want to say on behalf of the Ubuntu Global Network, we would like to express our sincerest condolences to Mrs. Nomalizo Leah Tutu and the family as they come to terms with the loss of a husband, a father, a grandfather. We pray that in time, the wounds left by this huge loss and sad loss will be healed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Volmink, for those words. And indeed, the ark, as was lovingly referred to, was, showed love, courage in fighting injustice. And as you said, as a call to action that we ought to emulate and to move beyond the words and to, to take what the ark gave to us and move it as a legacy in how we, how we live our lives. Thank you so much, Prof. And indeed, it's a very solemn day as we celebrate the life of Desmond Tutu, who has been quite an inspiration in the work of the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. Now, as we move on with our program, allow me to call on Tande Chan, who is the canon of St. Mary's Cathedral of Johannesburg, and also a leader of the Diocese of Johannesburg, to give her remarks on this occasion. Over to you, Tande.
Good afternoon, friends. As much as it is a solemn occasion and an occasion of pain and an occasion of loss, but in the acts sort of solemnity and sort of a way of doing things, he could have giggled and looked at all of us and said, you all look so solemn and so serious. I've just left for a few. I've done what I've done and I've gone to my Father. It is up to you to actually take the baton. That was the childlike life that he brought into a number of us. I will be speaking from a point of having lived in Orlando West. We did not know the ark. We knew Baba because he was a father to each of the children of Orlando West. He would not stop to ask you how you are, how your parents are, how are you doing at school? A simple man with humility and encourage you. I remember the first time he asked me, and he said to me, and I said, things were difficult. And he said, I've overcome polio. I've overcome this, and I am who I am today. And that was the first connection and interconnectedness. He later became my priest because the church was adjacent to where we stayed. And as a priest, he found us broken. He found us abandoned. He found us hopeless because Orlando West had experienced the pain of watching the Mandela family being ostracized, being persecuted. We had watched the Sisulu family being persecuted. And we were a forlorn group of people with no hope. All we knew is that everybody who is in leadership is in jail. Baba gave us hope. The ark, all his mantra was hope. When I gave birth to my 3 daughters, simple lay person as I am, and I still am, the ark decided to be godfather to each of them. And he baptized each of them. I'm ever so grateful that he gave that love, and he gave that passion, and he gave that humility to my children. So I am talking from a generation of me and my children feeling the pain of loss, because a godfather is your faith guidance that takes you through the journey of faith. I'm lucky because then the ark walked with me in my journey of faith. And I'm sure the church understands how much he transformed the church. He moved from our church as a priest to be the dean of Johannesburg, the dean of the Cathedral of Johannesburg. That was an accolade and an affirmation. And all of us saw hope and light because we had never been into the cathedral. The cathedral was in town and far from the townships. And it looked like this holy of holiest places. There goes the ark, and he becomes dean. The first thing he does is refuse to leave. Now, the Anglican Church has got an orthodox and a way of doing things. In our rule book, which is called the canons, once you become a dean, you stay in the deanery, which is Parktown, which is a suburb that's beautiful and leafy. He refuses to stay in the suburbs and in the deanery. He goes back to his house in Orlando West and commutes on a daily basis. If one wants to ask what humility personified is and what an activist does as exemplary, is what the ark was. As he continues to be a dean in this cathedral, he causes, as usual, the ark used to walk where angels walk. And for us, for a lot of people, we felt like he created havoc wherever he was. And yet it was only to transform. He opened the cathedral to be ecumenical. Now this in the Anglican Church is about just crossing the worst of what you needed to do, because the way we see our place of worship and the laws and rules we follow would not allow us to see a person from Islam or a Buddhist becoming part of that service. The ark says, God is for all. We are stunned. We're taken aback because we were not ready and understood the prophetic voice. And that prophetic voice echoes today for each one of us to say, we are just humanity, interconnected. And a God that created us pulls us together. And the ark did not say this in his sermons, but he did it. And that was something that we need, if, as John says, if we need to emulate, is actually to do than to say. At no point would the ark change anything. He moves to become the Bishop of Johannesburg. That diocese is a diocese split at this time, split as white and black and well divided. We used to refer to our parishes as the white parish, the colored parish, the Indian parish. The ark becomes our bishop. And the first thing is that those who had money, who were white, start pulling back and pulling their money. The ark suffered humiliation. And in that humiliation, what touched me in the service we had in Johannesburg yesterday was the bishop reminding us that the ark received a letter from a man who was so angry in the church, who actually attacked him personally, swore at him, wrote all ugly things. And the ark opened this letter, read it with a smile. And all he said at the end, when everybody was sort of, we cannot believe this is written to the Bishop of Johannesburg. The ark turns around and says, this man has the most beautiful handwriting, God-given. And writes back in reply, God has given you such a beautiful handwriting. Thanks for writing to me. What else would one ask? What was the ark? More than a beacon of prophetic voice. But it did not speak about forgiveness. He acted forgiveness. He did forgiveness without standing up and saying, you must forgive. We saw him forgive. We saw him acting the forgiveness. As he mastered that whole diocese, he brought us together. He made the connections. He visited from parish to parish. Even where he was attacked, even where he was accepted, he continued to say, you are all God's people and equal in the eyes of God. That message resonated in the entire diocese and connected us together, the angry, the frustrated, the rich, the poor. And that was what the ark was about. It was about transforming and bringing people together. As bishop, he then asks a mere me to attend the provincial synod with him. That is going to discuss the role of women in the church. I was an observer. This was a high meeting in our kind of church. It looked like nobody should be speaking because the silence in that room was unbelievable. The ark faced a 99% opposition to women being ordained or participating in the church. And a lot of us sitting in the gallery felt the battle is over. He has done what he had to do. There's not much he can do. The ark, as usual, giggles, laugh, this infectious laugh he had. He shares it, and then he says to them, you know, all of you sitting here, all of you, if we died together and went to heaven, imagine if you found God being a woman. Would you want to come back? And there was silence in the room. And he turns back and says, look at us as bishops, all robed in dresses, and yet we do not want to see a dress in our altar. That was the ark. Today, I sit in the highest order of the diocese as a canon of the St. Mary's Cathedral of Johannesburg, in the Diocese of Johannesburg, because the ark made it happen. I am who I am today because of who he was. And that is what Ubuntu is about. He had moments that were difficult in his life. And I remember us facing him at some stage of his life when he started organizing marches. This was just something we thought, you are now getting into politics, and that's a dangerous territory. And we organized ourselves to go to him and approach him and be confrontational to say, you know, we should keep to our lane. The church is the conscience of the state. We're all speaking these terms that were rhetoric. In his usual manner, the ark comes out of his house and says, all of you are here. And we say, yes, it's because we've come to ask who gives you the mandate on our behalf to begin to organize marches in the church. In his usual humility, he says, you do not know. God gave me the mandate, and I work on the mandate of God, a prophetic voice. We stood there actually in trance because we did not know what the next word would be. And he said, what I'd love you to do is join me in the march. And that's what we did. And that was the ark in his element of doing what he needs to do. In one of the marches that he did, as he now left Johannesburg to be the Archbishop of Cape Town, which means he was the highest head of the church in Southern Africa. And again, we put him in Bishop's Court. That's what the name means. It's a suburb in Cape Town, which is exclusive in Constantia. And the bishop stays there. First thing he does is to invite young people from Gugulethu to have a swim in the pool. This is just about to irritate and break the church. And the bishop says, we are all equal. And for all of us, the swim in a hot day is for anyone. Who has the borders to Bishop's Court? And that's why today, our Anglican church is as transformed as it is. And it is because the ark building blocks on every move he did. And without him standing on a mountain high and shouting, but acting out what needs to be done. I want to end with his march in Cape Town. We watched it on television, and the police, as brutal as they were, sprayed them with purple water. And I think it was a way of demeaning his purple robes. Today, we talk about the power of the purple people, because that was greatest power that we've had. But that purple became a statement which hangs in Cape Town today, that P was for people because he fought for people and he loved people and he connected people wherever race they came from, whatever religion they came from, whatever sexual orientation they came from. They were all just the people of God. He united those who were divided. The ark was still fighting the war of Palestine. He never used to shun. And that's why his invitation to the Dalai Lama is something that he was emotional about, because he didn't want anybody that could not unite others. He worked at reconciliation of a country that was torn and angry. And he cried at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He left the Truth and Reconciliation Committee with a lot of resolutions to be done, which were never done, which was part of his hurt, is that it was half-baked and never completed. The ark was a peace-loving person. He created peace where there was war. And I remember helping us recite the prayer of the St. Francis of Assisi, that where there is war, we create peace. He exuberated love, undivided love, a passion of loving other people. You would see it in his eyes as he walked into the room. He brought that kind of love for each person. He did not just speak about equality. He practiced equality. In the eyes of the ark, there was never the Queen of England, nor the President of the United States, nor the woman who sat on the pew in a parish in Orlando West. We're all equal. We're treated with the same love, with the same respect, with the same dignity. His love for song and dance was infectious. The Anglican Church is a very stiff church. We all stand straight and sing towards the altar. He broke that and allowed us to be who we are and dance to the faith and love the faith. What is left of all of us, the whole world, is for us to sing and dance and actually pick up the baton of his prophetic voice. He has left us a legacy that we will never find in a number of generations. And therefore it is imperative for us to hold the torch in bright light and say, I am because you are, and actually see Ubuntu personified, more than just spoken, but in action. May the soul of Desmond Mpilo Tutu rest in peace and rise in glory. Mama Leah and the family, we all mourn with you, but we know a portion of you has been taken, and we need to fill that void. Amen.
Thank you so much. And indeed, the multi-dimensions
Thank you, Moses.
That you spoke of, Thandi, in your remarks of Desmond Tutu, as a spiritual leader, as an activist, as a moral compass, and we continue to be inspired. And even at the tail end of your presentation, ma'am, you spoke to, Ubuntu, how he embodied Ubuntu, but and also how he was a leader, with his respect for any person, regardless of who they are, race, creed, culture, and all those things. So at this juncture, we are going to get some words from the man himself, from Desmond Tutu, as he speaks on what has brought us together, Ubuntu, and as he explains, what is Ubuntu as one of the towering icons who embodied and personified Ubuntu. Let us listen.
The profound truth is you cannot be human on your own. You are human through relationship. You become human, and we've seen it. Teachers of psychology tell us that we wouldn't be able to speak as human beings. We speak by imitating other human beings. We walk as human beings by imitating other human beings. We think, and so ultimately, yes, we are human only through relationship. And that is fantastic, because it says we are really made for this delicate network of interdependence, so that the completely self-sufficient person is in fact subhuman. I need you in order for me to be me. I need you to be you to the fullest. We are made for complementarity. Adam had certain gifts, Eve had certain gifts, but it was only when the two made up what was lacking in the other that they became fully human. And that is the fundamental law of our being. Ubuntu says, not you are human because you think. You are human because you participate in relationship. It says a person is a person through other persons. That is what we say, but that is what the Bible is saying, and that is what our human experience teaches us.
Very profound words from the Ark as he spoke to what Ubuntu is. I am because you are. And he spoke, that we are only human because of relationships, and which is the pivot of what we learn through the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. As we continue with our great tribute to the Ark, we are now going to go to listen and to hear a testimonial from Marlene Leroux on her learning journey with the Ark, Desmond Tutu. Over to you, Marlene.
I first want to say thank you so much for having this tribute that we could say something. I will be very short. I was a very young woman in 1986 when I came to Cape Town from the rural areas, and I'm a woman with a disability. I contracted polio due to the apartheid government, and I met up with the Arch, and he was just appointed the Archbishop in Cape Town. I then joined the Anglican Student Association, ANSOC, because they were the most active in marching against also apartheid with the others. So we were very church driven through the Arch, actually, to be action driven against the evil and brutality of that particular time. I was also the first person with a disability at the university. And the Arch used to take me under his wing, and I then realized that I can become whoever I want to become because I am a person. So I have a personal journey with the arts, and I also want to make you also laugh a little bit, because the arch was small in stature, and he used to tell me, Marlon, you're not going to march today because these Caspers is going to come. And I used to tell the arch, I'm going to march because I will be faster than you, because you still have a cloak that you must carry. And we had this battle with each other. And I'm so happy that the bishop have spoken to say that the arch was full of laughter amidst our sad time that we've experienced. But today I would like to say, before I leave, two things. The one, that the arch was for the voiceless. The arch was not for the pop stars and for the people with the money. The arch instilled in all of us, and in particular with me, that we can only be equal if we have an equal society. He spoke for women in leadership, and he spoke for the girl child to have equal education. He also spoke in the church setup, which was unheard of, for the LGBTQAIT plus community. The gay community is important in our society and in our churches. And he spoke up for persons with disabilities. We shared these two things, polio. But the arch also turned up when the media was not there. I had a cerebral palsy son, and the arch used to walk that path with me. When I lost my son, the arch was there for me. So today, we have lost the arch physically, but the teachings that he has given us was compassion with action. Don't be a wall and be sitting on the edge and be sitting on the fence. Put action to it. Professor Forming, you have put action to Ubuntu. Let Ubuntu not just be a PhD thesis. Let us say to young people that is part with this movement, be part of your community. Be part of action. Be part of responsibility. Be part of that young person that's going to say, I've learned from the teaching. I'm going to make a difference in my community. I'm not just going to be a Facebook follower. I'm going to be that young person that's going to be part of the soup kitchens, that's going to be part by changing with my action, by being a mentor to a young person that has not access to schooling. So thank you to Ubuntu leadership that we could pay tribute to the legacy of the arch. And I want to leave you by saying a legacy of action, a legacy not just of hope, but a legacy that when you're going to speak action, where you're going to sometimes be the only one in the room that's going to speak up against justice. I thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Marlene, for those words and for sharing your story and your testimonial with the ARC. You spoke about compassion with action and the call for action even to the young leaders that are gathered here, that we need to, to carry that legacy in our communities as well. Thank you so much. And indeed, it was really inspiring because you spoke of the ARC caring for the different causes that he had as a leader, in the public domain, but also in a time where you had situations, bereavement, he was also there. So which links what we saw the ARC as a public leader, of which he was, and also the personal side to him. So thank you so much for sharing your story. and we are truly honored to have you here. And also for the work that you do with disability rights. Thank you so much for that journey that you took and that you continue to take. Thank you so much, Marlene. And as we continue with the program, we are going to listen to a tribute from the Cape Town Youth Choir with the song Precious Lord, in our commemoration for this great life, a life well lived of the Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
And so Ubuntu says, my humanity is bound up in yours. I am only because you are. And we then say, a person is a person through other persons. Precious Lord, take my hand, bring me home through the night, through the dark, through the storm, to thy
Wow, such a beautiful, beautiful song. Allow me to take you down memory lane. In the year 2012, in the Gulbenkian Foundation, there was an historic event that happened, which was the first Ubuntu Leaders Academy, which has grown to be where it is, with so many academies and with a footprint in almost every country in the world. But at this particular Ubuntu Leaders Academy, at the final session, there was a privilege and an honor for the Ubuntu leaders there to encounter this great man, the Ark, Desmond Tutu. And at this moment, please allow us to show some of the reflections and some of the things that he said in that historic moment, where he spoke at the Ubuntu Leaders Academy, the first edition in Portugal. Thank you.
I notice that you're all prisoners. That's wonderful, wonderful that you're all on Robben Island, and I mean I can see wonderful. I want to say thank you to the Gulbenkian the foundation for the initiative that you took to set up this Ubuntu Academy, and all of these wonderful people who have devoted so much time and energy to inspire you. But also thank you for being the kind of people you are, who want to help others become better. One day, a little boy saw a man standing in a street corner, and this man was selling balloons. The green balloon, white balloon, red balloon, black balloon. And he had them on pieces of string. And now and again he would let go of one. And this little boy said, "Excuse me, sir." And he said, "Yes." "How come when you let go of the balloon, green balloon, white balloon, red balloon, even black balloon, they all float into the sky?" And the man said to this little boy, "It's not the color of the balloon that matters. It's the stuff inside." And we want to say to you too that you are fantastic people. You are not an afterthought. It's not as if God was saying, "Oh, you say, yes, I think I'm going to create whoever, you know." No, incredibly. I don't know, have you sometimes read the book of the prophet Jeremiah? Jeremiah, you should go and read it. Because right at the beginning, God says to Jeremiah, "Jeremiah, I want you to become a prophet." And Jeremiah said, "What? No, prophet. No, I call no. Oh, no, sorry, God. Sorry. I'm too young. And God gave him an extraordinary answer. He said, you know, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. That you aren't an afterthought. God knew that there was going to be a you from all eternity. That you are not an afterthought. You are not an accident. Some people might look like accidents, but I mean, yes. No one is an accident. You hear sometimes they say there are VIPs. You know, other people go and they stand in the long line. VIPs. Everybody prepares things for them. Not too many people are VIPs. But everybody is a VSP. You are a VSP. Very special person. Right? So when you wake up in the morning, look in the mirror. Don't be too frightened by what you see. And say, hey, I am a VSP. I am a very special person. And go out and behave like a VSP. Congratulations on your chuckle bickles, yes. Very good, thank you.
Wow, such inspiring words from the Ark, and indeed, he was always full of humor and inspired in each and every way, and whatever podium that he spoke. Now we are at another very exciting segment of our session today, as we celebrate the life of the Ark, Desmond Tutu, and we are going to be getting reflection on the legacy that the Ark leaves to the world. And to start us off in this section, I'm going to call upon Eduardo Sendital from Brazil, who's the president of the LATAM. I hope I pronounced it well, but welcome, Eduardo.
It was great, Moses. Thank you. Good day, everyone. Good day, Ubuntu leaders from all around the world. Tough to say anything after all these remarks and videos, but I would like to express here that I caught myself staring at the picture of the post that was the invitation for this event in the previous 2 days, and looking at Desmond Tutu smile and shining eyes on that picture. I think it's one of the biggest examples in legacy, because this shows to me the embodiment and of Ubuntu, expressed by the smile, by the eyes, and especially by the presence. I I've never had the experience to be physically together with the Arch, but I saw countless numbers of videos, as all Ubuntu leaders saw it, and we were impacted by his presence. And I'm still am, and I think all of us are. And I think one thing that Professor Volmink mentioned is action, and Tandy also. And we get the embodiment through practice, through action, living, forgiveness, compassion, love, Ubuntu. So I think this is our responsibility from now on. And I think the commitment to see so many people here together on the last day of this year, and countless people in the world watching us through live event, is a proof or a sign of hope that there are a lot of leaders committed to taking this legacy, taking this journey of Desmond Tutu forward. And many places in the world are needing compassion, love, forgiveness, Ubuntu. And I think in Latin America, definitely we are committed to, first of all, embodying it, in us. So that's the invitation. And then in servant leadership, as we all learn in the Ubuntu Academy. So it's an honor and a privilege to be here. And thank you all, friends from around the world, from Latin America. Thank you, and our best feelings to the family and to everyone. And it's a journey. We're going to be together. Ubuntu.
Thank you so much, Eduardo, for the words representing LATAM. And indeed, we were all inspired, and we still continue being inspired with the legacy that Desmond Tutu has left. And the key word that you gave us, action, embodying Ubuntu. As we continue in this segment, I call upon Hendrik Volmink, who is an associate with the Ubuntu Global Network from South Africa, to come and give his remarks. Over to you, Hendrik.
Thank you. Thank you, Moses. And good afternoon to the community of the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. Thank you for giving me the honor of sharing a few words in memory of the life of Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, or the Arch, as he was affectionately called. Finding the right words has been a challenge. As the Arch once said, quote, "Don't raise your voice, improve your argument." He was passionate about communicating with simplicity and power what we really want to say. And what I really want to say today are just three things. One, how he was such a gift to us all. Two, how his philosophy of Ubuntu profoundly impacted on me. And three, how his legacy of courage and joy can give us strength in our own lives. So let us speak first about the gift of his life and what it was to us. It's fascinating to observe how providence moves outside of the bounds of our limited understanding to meet in a very real way our shared needs. It seems that it was known in the height of its struggle against a crushing apartheid regime, the people of South Africa, here at the tip of this great continent, would need a voice of courage to give them the resilience to persevere and to eventually overcome. It also seems to have been known that today, decades later, at a time of such division, with the world pulling itself apart, literally, as it faces crisis after crisis, a legacy of Ubuntu would be needed as a torch to be passed on to a new generation of young global leaders to help them light the way towards a better future marked ultimately by a united humanity. And so Providence bent the arc of space and time backwards over 90 years to a family in the town of Klerksdorp in the northwest part of South Africa, to whom was born on the 7th of December 1931, a baby boy named Desmond Mpilo, Tutu. Although I, as long as I can remember, always saw Archbishop Tutu as a shining example of courage and hope, it was when I encountered the philosophy and wisdom of his writings and teachings that I became profoundly and permanently impacted. While I was undertaking research on Ubuntu at the University of Warwick over a decade ago, I came across this quote from the Arch, who was at that time reflecting on the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And he said, and I quote, "In the spirit of Ubuntu, the central concern is the healing of breaches, the redressing of imbalances, the restoration of broken relationships, and a search to rehabilitate both the victim and the perpetrator." Another quote from the Archbishop that struck me was, quote, "A person with Ubuntu has the proper self-assurance that comes from knowing that he or she belongs in a greater whole and is diminished when others are humiliated or diminished when others are tortured or oppressed." These thoughts helped to drive the course of my research, allowing me to arrive at the conclusion that the interconnectedness at the heart of Ubuntu could provide us all with a powerful and much needed new way of shaping global governance and citizenship. I shared these ideas with my father and others far wiser than me, in the hope that it would also provide them with insights on Ubuntu from the Arch, albeit through the imperfect conduit of my own limited perspective. Some of these thoughts, I believe, have had an impact on the great work of the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. And as we now turn back to the challenges of our world today, where the example of a devastating pandemic has revealed just how much we still lack this interconnectedness, it is clear that a new global ethic based on the principles of Ubuntu is needed now more than ever. But instead of trying to scale the enormity of the global need for Ubuntu in these few moments, a better way to conclude would be to reflect on a subtler but no less profound thread of the legacy of Archbishop Tutu. It is interesting that his middle name, Mpilo, means life, because it is here in the ups and downs of everyday life that his legacy becomes so powerful. We all face in our own lives countless difficulties that, if we allow them to, would bring us down to become lesser versions of ourselves. Fear of an uncertain future, or the despair at the many challenges and divisions that drive us apart are troubling examples of this. But when we face these challenges, as Archbishop taught us to, we see our fear transformed into courage and our despair transmuted into joy. Indeed, we can laugh at the storm with the same effervescent laugh of the Arch, with the same buoyancy of spirit. And when we do this, our own spirits begin to rise despite the gravity of what we face, and our lives, like his, become channels through which can flow the goodness that the world so desperately needs. Indeed, I can think of no better way to honor the life and legacy of Archbishop Tutu than to simply follow the advice of his own words, quote, "Do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hendrik, and indeed for that inspiration, and for those words that you shared. When you spoke of, even if there's the pandemic, even if we've got a lot of challenges that we're facing, we need to have the courage, and we need to play the little bits that we need to, so that we transform the communities that we come from, and we change the world. Thank you so much for the reflections. And in this section, allow me to bring to the platform Her Royal Highness Princess Reem Ali to come and give reflections as we celebrate the life of Desmond Tutu, the Ark.
Thank you so much, Moses, and greetings to everybody. So much has been said, far better than I can ever say it. But on this very, very sad occasion of the passing away of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, I am humbled and honored to have been invited to join this program with the esteemed Professor John Volmick and all the esteemed guests invited by the Ubuntu Academy. Tandy Chan's powerful testimony will stay with me forever. Marlene Leroux's wise words, not to be just a Facebook commentator, but to act, to have a legacy of action. And Heinrich Cyril Volmink, calls for a new global ethic based on Ubuntu teachings. A lot has been said and heard in the last few days since his passing away about Archbishop Desmond Tutu. It's been said of him that he exponentially increased our understanding of humanity, peace and reconciliation, restorative justice and human rights. And of course, all that is true. As a journalist, I wrote about what he did from far at one point, when he got arrested, when his name made the headlines for other achievements, all of which always warranted a story. When the group of elders was created, my own father being one of them alongside Desmond Tutu was actually the chair of the elders initially. My father says it was Desmond Tutu who, better than anyone, made him understand the deep and true meaning of Ubuntu. My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. And it's something I also came to understand gradually through observing their work and that of the mentors I have been blessed to have in that field. I hope that everyone who is alive and aware right now will feel, as I do, humbled to be able to say that we trod the earth for some years at the same time as such a giant of a man, the profound humanist that was Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And more importantly, that we're able to carry his values forward and continue to spread them. And so as we send condolences to his family and friends and to those who knew him, we must also send condolences to the entire planet, because his passing is a great loss for the entire world. I was fortunate enough to have crossed paths with him briefly at a social occasion. It was my parents' 50th wedding anniversary a few years ago. To the great delight of all of us in the family, Arch joined us on that evening, shared our meal and our celebration. I have a picture of him surrounded by my kids and nieces and nephews. They were too young at the time to realize with whom they were posing. Today, they're more grown up, and they find it hard to believe that the man they're pictured with is this incredible man, a real-life hero whose lifelong fight for justice and peace is being celebrated on each and every TV channel and every social media. As we've watched the various tributes about Archbishop Desmond Tutu unfold on TV together, I reminded my kids that there was one book I used to read to them. It's a book that Desmond Tutu had written, and in which was reflected the Ubuntu philosophy that he not only talked about, that he applied as well in his life and in his work. The book was called God's Dream. And I remembered how every time I read this to my children, I was so grateful to this man for sharing the values of Ubuntu with young children in a way that explains to them how we are all linked to one another and why it is important to remember that bond, no matter what we look like or where we're from. I'm sure you're all familiar with that book, and many of you maybe remember how it goes. He says in it, God dreams about people sharing. God dreams about people caring. God dreams that we reach out and hold one another's hands and play one another's games and laugh with one another's hearts. The book also says, God dreams that each and every one of us will see that we are brothers and sisters, even if we live in different faraway lands, even if we speak different languages or have different ways of talking to God, even if we have different eyes or different skin. This is Ubuntu taught to kids by Archbishop Desmond Tutu himself. It is just as fundamental, if not more, than when it is taught to grown-ups, something the Ubuntu Academy does beautifully, might I add. And no cause for him was too little or too large. Everything mattered. Archbishop Tutu, for example, supported everyone. He supported so many causes. He supported the Palestinian cause. He supported people who were suffering, refugees. So he looked at what was going on in Sudan. He supported my husband when he ran for president for FIFA. And he used his voice for justice, for freedom and peace, for South Africa, but for other people around the world. He never hesitated to put himself at risk on the front lines of the struggle, body and soul. I very much like the expression I saw in one tribute that I read. The author referred to him as the finest gentleman in disruptive thinking in South Africa after Nelson Mandela. Another member of the elders, Nelson Mandela's widow, Graça Machel, said, "Fighting from the trenches of South Africa required a courage that cannot be described. Day by day, minute by minute, every step he took, he was shaping the course of history. Every sentence he spoke impacted the lives of millions, and both unified and empowered those in the noble struggle against apartheid. She also spoke of his courage and of the momentous weight he carried. Arch created a moral space to confront both the oppressors and the victims and recognized that freedom had to be enjoyed alongside the respect for human rights. Indeed, he took up one of the greatest challenges when he chaired the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, a challenge of which he was acutely aware. Now, I cannot claim to speak for anyone else but those of us looking in from the outside, but I think it's fair to say that the outcome of what a post-apartheid South Africa would look like, whether they could achieve justice and equality, rested in such great part on the work of this committee. For those of us who are not there, I don't know if it's possible to truly imagine, after years of oppression and injustice and loss of livelihoods. And I know many of you who've spoken today can unfortunately imagine that because you did step into those footsteps. But imagine telling people that now you must talk about the past. You must tell the truth about what you did to those to whom you did it. You must repair for what you did. But after that is said and done, you must shake hands and forgive and move forward. It's impossible to think that anyone who did not have the credibility, the moral weight, and who had not himself practiced what he preached could have been able to do this. At the same time, Desmond Tutu did not compromise on the value of justice in working to bring about unity. But forgiveness, he said, affords people the resilience to survive and remain human in the face of others' efforts to dehumanize them. Indeed, he saw apartheid for what it was, of course, as something that made people less human because it went against equality. It goes against proper public participation, against inclusiveness, and it rejects the sharing of power, land, and opportunities. One could say, to refer to Desmond Tutu's children's book again, that it went against what he saw as God's dream. But he also saw it through the lens of Ubuntu as something that dehumanized the perpetrator as well as the victim. So Ubuntu was not only about getting along, about accounting for the past, as Desmond Tutu said, so we can become accountable for the future. It was about restoring dignity to both victims and perpetrators through the realization of the communal spirit and the fact that we cannot exist without one another. And that is why a word to describe the life and work of Desmond Tutu is courage, for it takes courage to truly and genuinely practice Ubuntu. I'm reminded of that every time I try. Every time I'm tempted to build walls when faced with the rejection of the work I do to promote dialogue and mutual understanding. It makes me realize how absolutely extraordinary this man was, to face not only proponents of apartheid, but also of the ANC with the same message of love and compassion, and demand that truth and reconciliation take place for all. His latest battle before he died, or one of them, was fighting against global vaccine inequality. I truly hope that the torch he has lit will be passed on to younger generations around the world. I hope his life and achievements end up in history books around the world to teach kids solidarity, that we are truly united and exist through one another. I look at all these tributes and I see the life of a man who had a mission and who fulfilled it to the utmost. As the new year approaches and I think about what our planet needs, I feel we all need more compassion in our world. We need more Ubuntu. So as I join everyone in mourning the loss of a great leader of our humanity today, I'm grateful that he left us such an amazing legacy. I would also like to wish everyone a more Ubuntu New Year. May we all never forget, when faced with the great human challenges we will continue to face tomorrow, refugees, climate change, how to share space and live better together, fighting against extremisms of all kinds, supporting the rights of women, children, and anyone to a dignified life free from want, that we need to act as he did, and that we are because we participate in relationships, as he said. And may we make sure that we keep Nelson Mandela's and Desmond Tutu's spirits alive by ensuring that generations to come will spread their message, that a person is a person through other persons, and may we all strive to truly live and embody that message as they both did. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Royal Highness, for your words and for your reflection on the legacy that the Ark leaves. You spoke of that there was no cause which was too small or too large for him, and he understood that true freedom could not only enjoyed where the human rights were not also taken care of, and the instrumental role that he played in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and that restoration of dignity. There was need for coexistence, both the perpetrator as well as the victim. And allow me to wish you also an Ubuntu New Year, as you said. I found that very, very interesting. Thank you so much, Your Royal Highness. Now we move on to the next section, where we are going to be hearing from different messages. And for the next message, we are going to have Antonio Mateus, who is a renowned journalist from Portugal, who spent a lot of time with Nelson Mandela, and let us hear his reflection on as we commemorate this legacy of Desmond Tutu.
Escolher um único episódio na hora do desaparecimento de uma figura tão notável como Desmond Tutu é um desafio praticamente impossível de cumprir. Resta-nos tentar ficar à altura da herança que ele nos deixa a todos nós, e que é uma herança pesada, a de tentarmos cumprir em coerência com as nossas próprias vidas os valores pelos quais nos batemos, aquilo que exigimos aos outros, perceber que a diferença entre nós todos não é na pele, não é na religião, não é na raça, não é no género. É na determinação com que nos unirmos, com que guardarmos os mais frágeis, com que nos batermos contra a injustiça, quando defendermos a dignidade. E essa é talvez a herança mais importante, mais preciosa que ele nos deixa, bordada no conceito do Ubuntu. Uma prática que a Academia Ubuntu segue há uma década no nosso país e com um valor, com uma intensidade que já contagiou outros continentes. É esse o desafio, é essa a herança que Desmond Tutu deixa a todos nós. Uma herança de amor.
Thank you so much for the message, Antonio Mateus. Allow me also to remind participants that we are having a simultaneous translation in English, Portuguese, and Spain. All you have to do is to look at your lower right corner. There will be a translation button that you can then use for the interpretations, should there be any change as the program continues. But at this particular point in time, we also have a message from John Batsby, the ambassador of the Tutu Foundation.
The incredible outpouring of love which has followed the death of Archbishop Desmond Tutu is the clearest acknowledgement of what a unique and remarkable human being he was, and of the huge impact he had on the lives of so many people. Underlying everything was the depth of his faith, which in turn enabled him to give expression to the Southern African philosophy of Ubuntu, spiritual generosity, which says, I am only human because of you. And he was also able to give expression to what he fervently believed, that the human condition is such that we are only totally fulfilled when we are helping others, when we are included in and contributing to a community and making the life of that community better than it was. So, Archbishop Tutu, it was a great privilege and honor to have known you and to have interviewed you as a journalist. And I do truly believe that your legacy will be that this outpouring of love is already an indication that your legacy will be transformative and that it will bring together South Africans in a way that has never happened before, and that your example will be a healing hand for the country and indeed for humanity. We salute you, Archbishop Tutu. May your soul rest in peace.
Thank you for the message coming from John Batsby, the ambassador for the Tutu Foundation UK. And as we continue with our program, now it's another special moment where we are going to receive gratitude to the Archbishop from Ruimakers, the director and leader of the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. Over to you, Rui.
Hello, Moses. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Boas tardes. For my friends from English-speaking countries, I will speak in Portuguese. You can choose the translation button and choose English for listening the translation in English. I will talk in Portuguese, also one of our language, working language in the Ubuntu world, as also the Spanish language. Os Ubuntus reúnem-se hoje para prestar uma homenagem que queremos muito especial, muito justa, à figura de Desmond Tutu, figura central de inspiração do nosso trabalho em todo o mundo. Ninguém como ele foi tão responsável pela interpretação e operacionalização do conceito Ubuntu que adotámos, numa mediação inspirada pelo professor John Volming. Sabem que em todas as edições de qualquer academia Ubuntu, em qualquer país, contexto cultural ou religioso, a primeira voz que se ouve é a de Desmond Tutu, com a sua forma inconfundível de nos partilhar enfaticamente "The profound truth is". E que verdade profunda aprendemos com ele? Com ele aprendemos o significado do Ubuntu, como eu sou porque tu és, torno pessoa através das outras pessoas. Sabemos que precisamos que cada um à nossa volta se realize em plenitude, para que nós o possamos fazer também. Recordaremos que a solidariedade que nos une faz com que, como dizia Desmond Tutu, a tua dor seja a minha dor e a tua alegria seja a minha alegria. Aprendemos com Desmond Tutu que é perfeitamente compatível uma defesa intransigente e corajosa dos princípios fundamentais associados à dignidade humana e, ao mesmo tempo, advogar o princípio da não violência e procurar caminhos de perdão e reconciliação. Recordaremos como liderou com sabedoria a Comissão Verdade e Reconciliação, não tendo vergonha de chorar com as vítimas, mas nunca perdendo a ambição de um caminho de libertação que representava o processo de reconciliação. Inspirar-nos-emos na sua coragem destemida, como quando em 1985 saltou para o meio de uma multidão em fúria que procurava fazer justiça pelas próprias mãos perante alguém indefeso caído no chão. Isso desafiar-nos-á a que não tenhamos medo de enfrentar multidões quando o que está em causa é a defesa da vida humana e a promoção da verdadeira justiça. Não esqueceremos também a sua enorme coerência em função dos valores que defendia, não só na luta contra o iníquo apartheid durante anos sem fim, mas também, se necessário, na crítica ao despotismo de alguns líderes africanos como Mugabe ou ao comportamento do ex-presidente sul-africano Zuma. A sua verticalidade é também um legado que nos deixa. Com Desmond Tutu compreendemos que o que verdadeiramente conta é o caráter de cada um e não a sua pertença étnica, religiosa, política ou sociocultural. Com a sua história dos vendedores de balões, que há pouco ouvimos, que nos contou diretamente a nós, aqui em Lisboa, na Fundação Gulbenkian, não esqueceremos o que importa mesmo, o que está dentro de nós. Lembrar-nos-emos que cada um de nós, começando por ele, claro, é um VSP, Very Special Person, e que devemos ter disso consciência e em cada dia agir como tal, fazendo que quem está à nossa volta se possa sentir verdadeiramente um VSP. Finalmente, o eco da sua alegria contagiante, numa gargalhada sonora e profunda, continuará a ressoar em nós, lembrando-nos como na vida somos chamados a ser sementes de alegria e artífices da felicidade para os que servimos. E com a certeza, como Desmond Tutu sempre dizia, que o mal não terá a última palavra e que o bem vencerá. E por isso escolhemos para terminar esta sequência um vídeo muito bonito de Desmond Tutu com Dalai Lama, com esta missão de trazer a alegria e esta capacidade de construirmos um mundo melhor para todos.
You are made for perfection. You are not yet perfect. You are a masterpiece in the making.
In spite, 80 years old, still I consider a student.
Really?
Really. Every day learning.
Yes. You are wonderful.
Oh, I expect that kind of comment.
We see him so serene and calm, but there was a time when he too it's like muscles that have to be exercised.
Growth. It takes time. Oh, minute by minute, day by day, month by month, year by year, decade by decade.
Start where you are. Do what you can. You will be surprised by the joy.
Oh, we are definitely going to miss that laugh. Thank you so much, Rui, for the reflections that you shared. And you spoke of the legacy that Desmond Tutu had, speaking truth to power, whether it was convenient and whether it was not, and of the great leader that he was and how he inspired, Ubuntu. Thank you so much. And as we now come to the tail end of our program, allow me to give thanks and gratitude, Professor John Volmink, for your words, Mama Tande Chan. Also, allow me to give thanks to Eduardo, Hendrik Volmink, Your Royal Highness Prince Rimali, and for the messages that we received from Antonio Mateus and John Batsby, and Rui, thank you so much again. And I would like to also thank the very special people, in the words of the ARC, each and every participant that came to make, that took time this very important day as we cross over into the new year, to honor the life of, the ARC Desmond Tutu. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for spending time here and reflecting the life of this great icon. Now we have reached the end of our program, but as we conclude this program, we are going to end with a song by the Soweto Choir, Amazing Grace. Thank you so much for being here, and happy New Year. And I wish you, I think, Prince Royal Highness captured it all, and Ubuntu New Year. Thank you so much, and have a blessed day. Thank you.
Amazing grace. Amazing grace. How sweet the sound. How sweet the sound. I saved the rain. I saved the rain. Like me. I was lost, but now I'm found. But now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Amazing grace. Amazing grace. How sweet. How sweet. The sound that saves. That saves. Wretch like me. I once was lost, but now, thank you, Jesus. Once was blind, now I see. The Lord has promised good to me. His word, my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. Amazing grace. Amazing grace. An amazing grace. How sweet. That saved the wretch. That saved the wretch. Like me. I was lost. Thank you, Jesus. You found me. You found me, Jesus. I once was blind. I see. Through many dangers.